So someone already shattered my only first place speedrun by over a minute, so today I figured I'd try something a bit different and do a game no one's done before. Fantastic Four for the PS1. A game I definitely didn't choose because there's a movie coming out soon and I wanted to ride the hype train, but let me tell you, I had no idea how much of a nightmare speedrunning this would turn out to be. So as I imagine you can tell, it's a beat 'em up, which usually means simple throwaway story, but somehow this game still manages to be confusing, mostly because it never actually explains anything, at least not until the very end. Yeah, Doom reveals that you've been helping him all along by bringing him parts for his time machine. Supposedly, anyway, you never actually collect anything. Also, it says online that Reed also builds a time machine to reach Latveria. Again, never mentioned. Also, Latveria's a country, not an era of history. It's going to be there regardless. I mean, the final cutscene has them flying away, so I guess in the end they didn't need a time machine? I don't know man, this plot makes no sense. Either way, it's a late 90s beat 'em up, so I really wasn't expecting much anyway. It's mostly just an excuse to have you jump around to random locations and fight some familiar villains. Just choose a character, fight your way through 5 levels, and beat up some enemies along the way. Although interestingly, despite this being a Fantastic Four game, there's actually 5 playable characters with the addition of She-Hulk. And while this may seem random, she was a consistent member of the team in the mid-80s, so I guess in that context it makes sense. Something that definitely can't be said for a lot of the game's other features. Firstly, the opening cutscene, like a lot of the game, is exceptionally goofy and disjointed.
Mr. Fantastic!
Yeah, if you're curious about the soundtrack, so am I, really. It goes from music that actually fits to what can only be described as 70s porno, to what sounds like something from RuneScape. Also, the loading screens are these bizarre racing minigames where you drive suspiciously phallic-shaped rockets, and what's weird is they're not even that long. The loading screens, I mean, not the rockets. I'm sure they're perfectly normal size. There's even a feature where in between the playable loading screens and actual levels, you're randomly thrown into mandatory 1v1 fights with characters like Dragon Man, the Hulk, and Iceman, none of which I should add are particularly well programmed. Just to clarify, these aren't bonus levels, you don't get anything for winning. The game just throws the same 3 characters at you over and over again like random Pokemon encounters, so yeah, it's pretty confusing. Anyway, random bullshit aside, what's the actual gameplay like? Well, it's not the worst, but it's also not fantastic. I'll admit, I do like that each character does feel somewhat unique. Each has their own moves and a special, for example Invisible Woman turns, well, invisible, and Human Torch rains down fire. They also have their own block animations, which for certain characters get pretty weird. Also, the stages themselves, visually anyway, aren't actually that bad. You've got Manhattan, the Skrull homeworld, Atlantis, Doom's Castle, and Subatomica, which I'm guessing is a place in the comics. Nothing to write home about, sure, but hey, I've definitely seen worse. Although, where this game really drops the ball is how it plays, because it might look fine, but it definitely doesn't feel fine. This shit is clunky as hell. The moves work by holding down the right trigger and doing combos on the D-pad, which are not only incredibly unresponsive, it locks you in place, and the painfully long recovery times leave you wide open for stun locks. Also, the special moves and blocking rely on the same meter, meaning you have to choose between defending yourself and doing a special. You'd think having 2 separate meters would make more sense, but as you've probably noticed by now, logic isn't exactly this game's strong suit. There's also a bit of a game balance issue, although it mostly works in your favour. Not all the moves are created equally, not even close in fact. She-Hulk, for example, has a basic, non-special attack that covers the entire screen. And what I find funny here is the game will actually call you out for spamming these by having a cheese icon flash in the corner. Now, that's not to say it's easy, because the game does have its fair share of pain in the arse enemies. These giant humanoid whales, for instance, were the bane of my existence, although the bosses, aside from a few exceptions, are hands down the easiest part of the whole game. I fought one boss 4 times before I realised it was Super Scroll. He died so fast, he never even got to use his powers. Now, at this point you might be thinking, okay, sure, the game's clunky and weird, but you haven't exactly torn it to shreds, so what makes it so hard to speedrun? Well, first off, this plays like a classic arcade game. You get a max of 3 lives and 5 credits, and once they're gone, it's straight back to the start. And given how sluggish everything is, getting hit is pretty much inevitable, so playing solo, even on the easiest setting, is an absolute ball ache. I even picked characters with broken AoE attacks and it still wasn't enough. Now, I imagine you're thinking, well, it's the Fantastic Four, not the Fantastic One. Why not just use some AI teammates? Well, I did. I figured they can soak up the hits while I cruise through the level, and to my surprise, this worked shockingly well. Until it didn't. See, the AI is weirdly competent. Like, woke up and chose violence levels of aggression. They'll obliterate everything on screen instantly, and at first I thought this was amazing, until I hit the first boss. This is one of 2 instances where the only way to deal damage is by throwing enemies, something that, as you can probably guess, requires there to actually be enemies. The AI, on the other hand, have different plans, and they make sure that nothing survives in that room for more than 2 seconds, effectively making it impossible to beat the boss quickly. I tried for 15 minutes before I realised, yeah, this isn't going to work. I then thought, okay, maybe a full team is overkill. What if I just bring 1? They can still tank some damage but stay out of the way more, and honestly it worked. I started breezing through those sections and things were finally looking up, until they weren't. See, the AI, while very good at killing things, isn't very good at dodging them. And by reducing the amount, I ended up making it so the one I did have was getting hit more, meaning they were burning through not only all of their credits, but also all of mine. I tried to work around it by testing every character combination, but nothing mattered. No matter how good the attacks were, I'd always hit a wall at either Atlantis or Doom's castle, since the AI would burn through all the credits. It got to a point where I was doubting whether I could even finish the game, let alone a speedrun. I was genuinely about to call it quits until I found this. Yeah, it's a cheat menu. Yeah, no, it is a cheat menu. However, it lets you activate free mode, which removes the credit limit. Now, before you start complaining, I'm the first person to ever run this game, which means I set the rules. It's part of the game, not some random emulator hack, and as far as I'm concerned, it's just another valid category. I mean, Dark Souls has a drop mod category, so in my eyes, this is totally fair game. Anyway, this actually allowed me to reach Dr. Doom, and combined with She-Hulk's stomp wiping out everything on screen, I managed to finish the game with a time of 55 minutes. However, there was one more issue, because of course there was. See, Doom has a mechanic where he keeps a shield up for most of the fight, and you have to wait for him to lower his guard to land a hit. The problem, thanks to the AI's relentless aggression, they will never stop attacking him, meaning he will never drop his shield. It's actually such a bad issue that with a full team, you basically soft lock yourself. This meant I wasted 9 minutes and realised if I wanted a decent time it's going to have to be solo. So I set out to pick the best character for a solo run, and in this case it's Invisible Woman. In a group she's pretty mid, her invisibility doesn't matter much when the AI's already going full berserk, but on her own with homing attacks she's perfect for speedrunning. And on my next attempt, I kicked Doom's ass in about 10 seconds and clocked a 48:45, a new world record, by default. It would have been faster if his dialogue hadn't glitched and he repeated himself 3 times in a row, but hey, I'll take it. So that's the video. Speedrunning this was definitely an experience. It didn't go exactly how I planned, especially having to rely on free play mode, but honestly, most of the stress came from figuring out how to speedrun it rather than the game itself. Nearly every feature that's supposed to help you ends up actively working against you when you're trying to go fast. On its own, it's not that bad. Yes, it's entirely devoid of cohesion and I question almost every creative decision, but it works. Clunky as hell, but it works. I will say though, if you are playing it, play it solo or with other people, because the AI will make some of the bosses an absolute chore. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.